Ladies and gentlemen, we are all here to understand the current food industry scenario, to understand it on the level of distribution, manufacturing, and production. So, we are all here for a great purpose to understand things better, to get more awareness. So, I want you all to please be very attentive. I would like to say thanks to all of you for coming forward and becoming a part of this wonderful event. So, without any further delay, I would like to call up the first speaker. We have Mr. Harish Vijor, Global Brand Guru and Founder, Harish Vijor Consult Inc. Can we have Mr. Harish Vijor on stage? So I would like to tell you all something about Mr. Harish Vijor. Harish Vijor is a brand thinker and practitioner operating out of Bangalore, India. He runs a unique boutique consulting outfit branded Harish Vijor Consult Inc. and a brand that has a consulting presence across the market of Hong Kong, Seattle, London, Istanbul, Dubai, and Indian subcontinent. We welcome you here, sir. How are you feeling?
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you.
Are you excited?
Well, I guess as excited as one can be during COVID-19.
Great, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on board today. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I ask Mr. Harish to start with this topic, I would like you all to please go through all the tools you see on the right and left screen of your laptop. So we have different options on the left screen and on the left and right side of your laptop. So please visit the handout area, the launch area, the booths. So you'll get to know the information about the event. We have the agenda in the handout section in which you'll get to know what all sessions we have today. And apart from that, I request you all to please be very attentive and very participative. Feel free to ask any questions you have. So without any further delay, I would like to request Mr. Harish to please continue. Thank you, sir.
Hi, a very good afternoon to each one of you. And I would like to kick off this inaugural keynote address at the virtual food show. Now, the fact is that, hey, listen, guys, these are tough times. And during tough times, what typically happens is we have to reinvent ourselves. And therefore, one of the important things that I have done in this reinvention process is I have decided never to use a PowerPoint presentation on my webinars or on my talks. So extremely important for me to convey that I've done something rustic, which is I've taken a razor and I've taken a kind of a post-it pad and I made some banners for you so that you know exactly what is going on. So first of all, welcome to this keynote address. Now, a keynote address is meant to leave back thoughts, is meant to leave back munching points, which possibly you'll think about for the sector you and I are going to talk about today. And the sector that you and I are talking about is the food processing sector. I call this a stomach and bladder sector. It is a stomach and bladder sector, basically because it's about food and beverage. And guess what, guys? Food and beverage is a beautiful industry to be in. And if you're in the processing industry that relates to food and beverage, it is something which can never, ever go out of fashion. Why? Because early in the morning, maybe at about 8 o'clock, you have a breakfast, and by 1 o'clock, you're very hungry, and by evening, 7 o'clock, you're possibly once again hungry. A nation of 1.3 billion people, which is India, we do 3 meals a day, and some of us do 4 meals a day, sadly or happily. 3 meals into 1.3 billion people is equal to 3.9 billion meals. So India is a nation of 3.9 billion meals. This is food that we put into our stomachs. And of course, there is that item called a bladder. And into that bladder goes bladder fluid. And that bladder fluid could be milk, it could be water, it could be beer, it could be anything which is of a liquid orientation. And that's one of the reasons I call the entire food processing sector a stomach and bladder category for the country and for the world at large. Now, if you look at our food and beverage industry and our food processing industry, the data is all out there. In this brief keynote address, I'm not going to talk about data, but I have to set the background. And the background is that we are the sixth largest food and grocery market in the world. Sixth largest. Out of the countries of 225 countries, we are number six. So we must be happy. And we are number six because we have a large number of people and a lot of us love to eat. The second fact is that the food and grocery category in this country comprises 65% of all retail. All retail, if we are talking about, is about 800 billion US dollars. You can talk about food and grocery to be about 563 billion US dollars. So food and beverage is the largest industry as far as you and I are concerned. And therefore, if you're in the food processing industry, you are in the right place at the right point of time. And I think this is a sunrise industry. If you look at it, we are the largest producers and consumers and exporters of spices in the world. So every spice that you talk about has an Indian origin, which is very large. Cashew nut. I worked for the cashew board for a period of time. And at one point of time, I had suggested to them that they should call it India nut and not cashew nut, because India is the largest producer and processor and consumer of cashew nut as well. And therefore, if you really look at it, we are big in many ways. We are the second largest producer of fruits and vegetables in the world. Of course, a lot of it gets wasted. Numbers apart, I think, in this keynote address, I'm going to address one more fact. And the fact is that a lot of people are involved in the food and beverage industry. The beauty of it is that 1.3 billion people are involved in the food and beverage industry, because all of us have to eat those 3 times a day, creating those 3.9 billion meals. But apart from that, right at the bottom of the rung is the farmer. And the stakeholder number one in this food processing industry is the farmer. And are you, as a food processing person, thinking of the farmer? That's question one. The second is the middleman. The middleman who goes to the farmer, takes the stuff out of the farmer and takes it upwards in the chain, adding value for himself and for the market by and large. You could be one of them. So you're stakeholder number two. So you have to look after the middleman. And stakeholder number three is the manufacturer, who gets all the raw material in and actually manufactures. Stakeholder number four is the manufacturer who gets inputs of every kind, or the guy who actually gives inputs to the product. For instance, in the tea bag industry, there is a thing called a string. There's a guy who has the expertise in making that string. And that string is a high specialty string. And that specialty food string is a part of this manufacturing business. So he's the stakeholder number four. There is a staple which goes into a tea bag, and that is yet another specialty item, and that guy is also a stakeholder. The stakeholder number five, or the manufacturer number two, is the guy who makes the machines. And I'm sure many of you out here in this forum today are machine makers. So you have to be taken care of. The transporter, who takes care of transporting this food and beverage item from the manufacturing facility to the point of consumption, he's yet another stakeholder. And the seventh guy is the middleman, or the guy who's the retailer. And the eighth person is the consumer. So this is a farm to fork business. There are many stakeholders in this business, and I'm sure all of you on this address today are one of these 6 sets of people that I'm talking about. So what are we talking about? Everybody in this industry is happy or unhappy. I suspect being unhappy is part of being a business person. And if you're a business person, you're unhappy. You're unhappy with your volumes, you're unhappy with your values, You're unhappy with the margins. You're unhappy with the fact that we have COVID-19, which is restricting much of our business activity. If you look at it, the money is in the business of food processing, but it's not in the business of food processing as usual, but it's in the business of food processing as unusual. Business unusual is what I'm talking about in this 20-minute keynote address to you. What is business unusual? Business unusual is you investing your time, your energy, your money, everything to rebuild and reboot the industry that you are in. You could be any of these six constituents or stakeholders. My view, my belief, you need to reinvent because COVID times are new times. There is an Amrit Manthan in our lives. Our lives are shaken up. Consumer lives are shaken up. Just like that, from the farmer to the folk, extremely important to reinvent. So do you, as a persona in the food processing industry, believe in reinvention? Or are you that person who says, oh, business is like this only, and this is how it will continue? My appeal to people in the food processing industry is you have to think new. You have to think of really creating an Amrit Manthan for yourselves. And this Amrit Manthan needs to create havoc in your business. I have always believed there are three formats of business. There are three roles for every businessman. And you are a businessman. And for you, the role number one, which you have performed and fulfilled into good action, is the Brahma role. You create a business. Brahma, the creator. You, the creator, who created your food processing business across any of these six stakeholders. The second role of yours is to be the Vishnu. You have to preserve. You are the preserver. You have to preserve your business. And guess what? My dear friends, you are possibly doing very well preserving your business. Your Vishnu role, you're doing very well. But my dear friends, in COVID Kal, as I call this era we are going through, extremely critical for you to adopt and adapt the third role, the Maheshwara role. You have to create a business, the Brahma role. You have to nurture the business, the Vishnu role. And when push comes to shove, you need to actually destroy the business. And destroying the business is the Maheshwara role that each one of you in this fora, at this fora, have as a duty to perform. So my appeal to you in this keynote address is to request you to really relook at your business. You created it well. You're resting on the laurels of what you did in the past. You're nurturing it reasonably. And you're possibly troubled at this point of time as you're nurturing it. Is it time for you to destroy your model, to recreate from the ashes of this model the new business model ahead? And that is what I'm going to talk to you about in three thoughts. With that, I'm going to conclude this keynote presentation. I'm going to leave behind for you, as any keynote address is meant to leave back, three thoughts to munch. Three thoughts to munch. Point number one, a very strong point I feel is reduce export dependency. Ouch. Many of you will say, what are you talking about? The food processing industry gets its best value from the export market. In the export market is where you make the best of margins. And guess what? I have my footprint across 43 different consuming countries. You want me to reduce export dependency? I'll give you a logic why. My dear friends, if you really look back at the earth today, what is happening is self-sufficiency is becoming the norm. Self-dependency is becoming the norm. Within India, we have a call from our Prime Minister Modi ji to say Atma-Nirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India. Now, my dear friends, why am I asking you to reduce export dependency in the food processing sector? Fundamentally because Atmanirbhar Bharat can be for Bharat. Atmanirbhar United States of America, think of it. Hashtag Atmanirbhar USA, hashtag Atmanirbhar United Kingdom, hashtag Atmanirbhar Poland, hashtag Atmanirbhar Germany. This is a sword that can cut both ways. Both ways. When you say Atmanirbhar for India, other countries can also talk about Atmanirbhar. And guess what suffers the most when any country adopts the Atmanirbhar plan for itself? What suffers the most is imports which are not very high value added. And guess what? The food and beverage exports of our country are not very high value added exports. Any country can create for itself a format of substituting the imports that you and I are talking about. This will not happen overnight. It'll take 20 years. But at this keynote address, my request to you is reduce export dependence. Every business of yours must have, even if you are a transporter or if you are a guy who's actually procuring from the farm, or you're a guy who's a manufacturer, or you're an exporter or a domestic player. Every one of you in the food processing business must have an avatar which is Desi as well. You cannot be a 100% export oriented guy. You need to have a Desi avatar. So start building a yin and a yang. A yin and a yang is a figure like that. Have 10% Desi and 90% export, but grow that into occupying a larger portion of the Desi market, because Desinomics is going to be a theme of the future. That's point number one. The second I, these are things that I call the three I's. The first I is essentially going to be about this business of saying that this is an ideas business. The entire business of food processing is an ideas business. Better the idea, higher on the value chain do you sit. More inferior the idea, lower on the value chain you sit. So look for the higher value chain ideas. Food processing industry. I work in this industry. I've been working for the past 26 years in the food processing industry. If you look at it, in the beginning, I used to work with the lowest common denominator people who would really literally be at the realm of commodity export. As it goes, we have built higher value, higher value, higher value. And today, possibly, the work which is most exciting is at the highest end of value delivery. Can you send something out of India which costs X, and can you derive a value which is X plus 800%? 800 is nothing new. Give you an example. Many years ago, we decided that we are going to export an Indian handicraft product. So we went into the villages of India and I tried to look at what kind of product could we export. Everybody said we'll export this candle or this specialty fabric. I picked up a nasty thing. I picked up the great Indian jhadu, the jhadu. Because in India, the jhadu is made out of plant excess and the stems of plants. And what we did is we took the jhadu and we bought the jhadu from the jhadu maker, and then we took it and we did not export the jhadu in containers just as it was. We added value and value and value and value. This is a ridiculous example I'm giving you, but I'm giving it to you just to tell you that you have to add value and ideas. We took the jhadu and what we did was we suddenly had an idea. I said, why don't we put it under sandwich glass and make it into a display item? The great Indian jhadu, a small little booklet with it to say where the jhadu comes from, the origin, the ecosystem, the plant life, the people who live around it, the rural milieu. And guess what? The West loved the stories. And we actually exported the humble jhadu, which was, at the net of it, bought at 12 rupees per Indian jhadu, was exported at $280 per piece in a sandwich glass format. The net cost of that sandwich glass format would have been, if you're receiving $280, we actually produced the whole thing for only as much as 700 rupees. Let's talk about it as $10. A $10 jhadu going at $280. I'm very proud to tell you that as many as 86,500 houses in the United States of America have the humble jhadu showcase in their drawing rooms, in their best drawing rooms. Ridiculous example, but that's value addition. From $10 to $280, a 28x value addition, that's what you and I need to be looking at in the food processing industry. Do we get that? We don't. Are some people getting that? Yes, I can give you examples, but we don't have time. In fact, many of them are my client companies, and we are able to generate that in the new world. Point number 2. Let's really talk about the second point, which is to say the 3 I's that I'm talking about. The second I is really all about the fact that we are an impatient generation across the world. Impatience is the norm. Food processing is great for the impatient people out here. Many of us don't have the time to make our own breakfast. A poha takes as many as 11 different ingredients to make. But then who has the time? So we don't put 11 ingredients, we put 4 and we get the substandard poha. So what if there's that food processing guy who actually puts in those 11 traditional inputs and the poha tastes just as it used to taste in the old days? Some of the best multinational companies in the country are moving away from noodles alone to poha. So 2-minute poha, no, in this case it might be a 3-minute poha, coming from possibly Nestle. So Nestle is not only about Maggi. Nestle is going to be about Maggi noodles and maybe Maggi poha. Desinomics is going to be pretty useful. The third I, and that's the last one I want to present you with, is the I word, which is immunity. Immunity. What is immunity? This immunity word is very, very important today because people are saying, I need to have the immunity to withstand it all. The food processing industry has a fantastic role to look at immunity as a very important idea. So the last 3 C's that I presented to you, the 3 I's that I present to you, is first, it's an ideas business. Get new ideas for your business. Buy it off the shelf or get it for yourself and work on it and recreate your business. Create a Maheshwara role on your business. Destroy the existing model, create the new. The second I is you're catering to an impatient generation. Go with impatience-oriented products. And the third I is the immunity-boosting products that you and I talk about. The last point that I want to talk about is this fact that there's something called digitalism in our lives. Digitalism is the new religion in our lives. Everything you and I do is digital today. All of us are literally on WhatsApp. That's digital. All of us are on Facebook maybe. Many on Twitter. Many on Instagram. Very few on TikTok. Maybe on Metron. Maybe on Raposo. But all of us are digital animals. The new way of doing anything is digital. Food is the same. There's something called, I have created something called physical food, which you have created, and I have created something called digital food. A lot of us who cannot afford to eat all the processed foods because of hypertension, because of diabetes, today eat with your eyes. When you eat with your eyes, that's digital food. And guess what? There's money in digital food as well. Having said that, my dear friends, I conclude this special keynote address. It's been a pleasure being here. I know we may not have time for a Q&A, and therefore I'm going to leave back an email ID, which is harishbijur@hotmail.com, my personal ID. And if you say that you were at this virtual food show, I promise to reply to you within 24 hours. It's been a pleasure being here. Take care and all the best as you create the Maheshwara model in your business. Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was wonderful to hear you, and I really liked it. I have to say that you put it really well. I really like the idea of those yellow stickers and all. It was really wonderful to hear you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, moving further, we have the next speaker. And to call up the next speaker, I would like to request Mr. Mahendra Thakur, my co-moderator, to please proceed further and invite the next speaker. And once again, I would like to remind you all, ladies and gentlemen, that if you want any hand out any pamphlets, we have this handout section. You will get the agenda also here. If you want anything, you can simply reach to the right left tools of your screen. So we have Mr. Mahinder with us. Mahinder ji, over to you.
Hi, Swati. Thank you so much. This has been a very good session, the first one, from the keynote speaker, Mr. Harish Bizur. Now, my name is Mahinder Thakur, and I would be conducting the second session of the day, which will be on COVID-19 challenge and solution for food and beverage industry. This is a virtual food show you're attending. This is the first one in this category. We are doing this for the first time, and we have got a very overwhelming response. So I hope Swati has told you to go through the lounge option, the booth option, the handout option. This full agenda of this particular show is in the handouts. So I'll see you the other side in just a few minutes with the second speaker of the session, Mr. Sagar Kurare. Food show. Can you hear me?
I can hear.
There is some background noise, sir.
No, there is no background noise here.
Okay. So,
You guys hear?
audience, sorry?
Can you guys hear?
Yes. So I'll just give you a quick introduction to
Okay.
Mr. Sagar Kurare, then he can start with the session. So Mr. Sagar Kurare would be speaking on COVID-19 crisis, challenges and solutions for food and beverage industry. Mr. Sagar Kurare is an expert on food processing and associated infrastructure and technologies. He is heading India's oldest and the leading consultancy company in food processing sector, namely Suman Projects Consultants Pvt Ltd. Suman Projects Pvt Ltd is a 48-year-old consulting company in India's agri-infrastructure and food processing sector. The company has provided its services to more than 500 plus projects in India and abroad. The clients include Fortune 100 companies, multinational companies, national and state government organizations, as well as small and medium enterprises. Mrs. Kurare is the immediate past president of All India Food Processors Association, as well as executive committee member of some of the leading industry associations in the country, such as CIFTI, FICCI. He has recently been elected as National Vice President of Association of Food Scientists and Technologists. So with this, over to you, sir, for the challenges in food and beverage industry due to COVID-19.
Thank you so much. Quick correction. I am also the immediate past president of the National Vice President of AFSTI, Association of Food Scientists and Technologists. Not current. But having said that, friends, a big hello to all of you. We, as you know, are all in this together with regard to the COVID crisis in the food processing industry. It has been challenging last few months. starting from March, when we were expecting this crisis to be a matter of a few weeks, to in April, May, when we realized that this may be on for a few months, to now that we think that this is going to go at least till end of this year, if not the beginning, and hoping for the vaccine to come out sooner than later. Having said that, food processing industry has itself been fortunate as well as going through a challenging time. Fortunate because we are one of the few industries in this COVID crisis that had some functionality happening. Although the production levels were very, very low, and in many MSME cases the production had stopped. But having said that, there was some activity happening in the food sector versus many other industries where there was absolutely no activity happening. So food industry as such is facing challenges. I'm sure over the last 3-4 months you would have heard a lot about this issue. But I'm here to talk from a point of view of more so in terms of solutions than in terms of challenges, but one by one and kind of move forward with this. So one of the biggest challenges the food processing industry currently is facing is with regard to its capital flow disruption. Now, we all know that especially with regard to the MSME sector, the operations has been badly impacted. There were many MSME sector companies that had to actually close their operations down, and that led to serious capital flow issues. Today are looking for capital flow infusion. Banks are very hesitant to give that money out. They are primarily still cherry picking as to whom to give the money and whom not to give the money to. This is in spite of the fact that we have a government of India who announced that up to 3 crore collateral-free loans will be given to MSME sector. If you remember, the definition also got changed to on the basis of turnover to up to 250 crores of turnover or below. They will all be considered as MSME sector. Now, how do we know that the money is not coming to the economy? It's because of the fact that all the banks, if you see the RBI treasury, up to 8 lakh crores of all the bank's money has been kept in RBI treasury. Now, this is in spite of the fact that RBI has reduced the reverse repo rate so that banks can be encouraged to give the money out to the customers. But banks are having their issues, and those issues are primarily with regard to the fact that there are already existing NPAs in the economy, and banks are already facing NPA issues. So banks are quite hesitant with regard to giving the loan out. This issue has obviously been brought to the notice of Government of India. If you see, Honorable Prime Minister did bring it to the bank's attention also to enforce the thought of the government that please make sure that the money is getting out and being distributed among those who are in need, not necessarily those who are not in need, and just to kind of show that a paperwork has been done and money has been given. So that is not the need of the hour. Hour is to take that risk, give the government back collateral loan to the MSME sector. That's something that is required to be done. Also, if you see, there are other issues that economy is facing, the food industry per se, and that is with regard to the labor issues. Now, we had a kind of a weird situation initially when the shutdown happened, we had a farm level kind of a disruption where we were in the middle of a harvesting season, primarily because we had harvesting of many crops such as mustard, fenugreek, wheat, garlic, etc. And there was a supply chain disruption at that particular point of time. And then on the other side, we had a supply chain disruption from the industry side because not only we were not getting the raw material onto the factories, but also to the fact that whatever the factory was producing was not really getting out. So this supply chain was a serious issue which required to be dealt with. Now, over a time, I think things have kind of eased, but the labor-related situation is still standing and still remains. We do have a situation where many of the workers today are in their native villages and have doubts and aspirations with regard to the fact whether they should come back or not. I tend to feel that probably this situation will persist till end of this year, but hoping that the government also supports the industries in ensuring that they are encouraged to come back to their workplaces and continue with their livelihood the way they were initially doing. So we do encourage the government to come up with some policy-related matters where they can kind of give some incentives to the food processing industry so that those can be put in place. We also have a serious dent to the fact of the ease of doing business in India. Now, if you see the ease of doing business in India, on that matter, the government of India has been always trying to pitch of Make in India initiative, where companies have been encouraged to kind of come to India and try to set up their shop. This has been now escalated to a new logo, which is with regard to Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, there were a lot of aspirations.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, please.
Do you want a presentation up?
Can I put the slide up? It will be great.
Okay, let us try.
Yeah, friends, I was told that my presentation was not getting up for some technical issues, so I'm glad that this is happening. But in any case, let me continue for those who are listening. And that is with regard to the ease of doing business in India. Now, we know that we initially have a Make in India which is still existent for last 7 years, and this has been now escalated to an Atmanirbhar. Now, many typically try to question of what is the difference in the sense that we had a Make in India versus Atmanirbhar Bharat now. But I think the difference is the new geopolitical scenario we are looking at. 7 years back, 6 years back, 5 years back, the geopolitical scenario was not what it is today. Today we are in a world which is deglobalizing. We are in a world where US is saying make America great, India is wanting investment. Every country is wanting investment and trying to strengthen their base. And what is that we do is a situation where we are having a deglobalized world where there will be certain barricades that will be put in terms of products coming in and out of that particular country. And therefore, Indian government is also readjusting to that. And hence the change from point in India to Atmanirbhar Bharat. The purpose of Atmanirbhar Bharat is inclusive of Make in India, which means that not only are companies encouraged from anywhere in the world to come and set their shop, especially in the new geopolitical situation where we see that a lot of Japanese investments, a lot of European investments can come in to India as compared to China, but also to encourage local industries to kind of go global. Local industries in the sense that local industries were interdependent on just in inventory coming from different parts of the world. But now geopolitically that is changing, and hence government of India wants to encourage the fact that you should manufacture many of those imported commodities which you were earlier importing, and trying to ensure that an environment whereby there is some kind of a of business and some kind of an incentive in place. I will give you an example for that. In food industry, we are having a situation whereby a lot of high capacity plant and machineries are not manufactured in India. So if you're looking at something like manufacturing a potato flake processing plant, or the key machinery is coming from Europe or from China. And even at a smaller scale, we have even Rasgulla and Gulab Jamun making machines that are actually coming from China, so forth. So, government of India realizes this fact and wants to therefore position itself in a way where companies in India are encouraged to make those machines, and there is an existing market in India which is an advantage to many of the manufacturers anyway. Plus, they can also look at global competition. Now, here's where the thing comes. When it comes to global competitions, when those companies move into manufacturing and putting alternatives in place by making the same products or machines in India, will they be able to globally compete? And that's where the government of India needs to move, because the cost at which we are able to produce is lower, is higher than that probably China is making, because of several incentives that are in place and subsidies that come into play. Now, that's where the government of India needs to support the industry to ensure that not only are we making in India and our Atmanirbhar, but also to the fact that the Atmanirbhar would be a reality, able to globally compete with major competitors like China, and therefore are able to offer products of a good quality at a very competitive rate. So this is an important aspect of it. Another typically faced in the industry, even facing at some level now, is with regard to educating our enforcement officials. So what typically we saw during COVID crisis is there were notifications being issued both by central government as well as by the state government, and yet those notifications were not being enforced, in the sense that people at the bottom, at the ground level, have no idea what should be stopped and what should not be stopped. In many cases, especially related to the food industry, and many of the entrepreneurs had to, even the production and the sector was declared as an essential item, and the people were declared as frontline people. Yet we had a long time for during which the industry and the companies were closed. So, while it has been left to states by central government in terms of trying to ensure that their enforcement officials, but yet I think there are certain central government agencies that can play a very critical role in trying to ensure that these enforcement officials are properly educated and are aware, and therefore are knowing that this can be done, and companies are allowed to open without any hesitation or issues, and no harassment takes place for them. One thing that we have seen during our COVID crisis is a lot of companies in Europe and in many other parts of the world got actually cash incentives for operations, versus India's strategy of avoiding cash incentives. My suggestion is that government of India may not look probably, if you can get direct cash incentives as an industry, that would be great. But if not, at least there should be indirect cash incentives. And by that, I mean that if you see the total income India earns, that is primarily earned by people, by citizens, as well as by companies who are actually paying taxes. So we have a situation where only 3.5 to 4% of the Indian population is paying taxes, and based upon that, the entire economy is running. So there are two things that are typically recommended and suggested. One is trying to see that the tax net is increased so that the burden on people who are paying taxes does not keep on increasing. Because the strategy is whoever is paying taxes, let's add more tax on them, and therefore the burden on then increases. Of India to reform and for our country to progress further. And I think government of India is up to it with the fantastic mandate that they have. And they have the political will also, I believe, to do so. Now, idea is to simplify forward. So, one is to therefore increase the tax net associated with, and second thing is to also ensure that tax incentives, like those who have paid, all those companies and individuals who have paid suppose taxes, they should at this time be incentivized and encouraged, in the sense that for those who have paid taxes, a suggestion is that you should say, all right, because you have been paying taxes and you are a tax paying citizen and a tax paying corporate, a government of India gives you 1 month of your 3-year tax average back into your accounts. Okay, so that in a way would be an indirect, and that would also send a message to all those people who are not paying taxes. So it should typically therefore say, all right, there is an advantage in paying taxes, and government understands and appreciates the fact that the people and corporates who are paying taxes are therefore encouraged, and they should get 1 or 2 months or whatever be the government comfort factor in terms of reimbursing them the average related to that, so that at least they have some cash in hand to ensure that there is no capital flow disruptions associated with that. Another fact is that I also encourage state governments to look into the utility cost, water, electricity, gas bills. That has not eased for many companies and many. So, as you know, there is a thought process whereby some people typically say, oh, all right, if the company was shut, then how come electricity rates automatically would be down? But the fact is that there are actually today companies that are operating with much less workforce, but they are operating, and having said that, they have to pay the rentals, they have to pay the taxes, they have to pay the property taxes, they have to pay the rentals, they have to pay the employee costs. There are costs associated with running the company which are fixed costs. And if a state government at every state level can come forward and try to offer some kind of an incentive whereby again either you reduce it or have a 1 month off or so. Just a moratorium is not going to make an impact with regard to. So those are some of the thought process which are very, very important and critical. A couple of things which we are very happy about as an industry is also with regard to the fact of change in the MSME definition. So that was definitely a very, very good thing Government of India did. And now we have also a situation where the APMC Act, which has been the need of the industry, that has changed. What that will do is allow a farmer to not be in the hands of a few middlemen, and the farmer would therefore have an option to sell his produce out of state also, and that would therefore lead to market linkages. And also the fact that any food processing industry that was sourcing any raw material for their own production had to pay an APMC tax, which was 1% to 2.5%, depending upon which state we are talking about. But then that has now gone, and the industry is very, very happy with regard to that. And lastly, I would like to say that another interesting thing that Government of India put through is with regard to the global tenders. So if you see that up to 200 crores of global tenders that were put out, for that MSME sectors will be encouraged from henceforth. And what was earlier happening is a lot of tendering were going out only on the basis of the turnover criteria, and companies were showing more and more turnover, even from non-related businesses, to therefore be eligible for those projects and therefore be in line for those bids. Now, what we like to encourage of Government of India is to ensure that a lot of MSME companies, especially homegrown MSME companies, should be limited to that, not just multinationals. So we are having a situation where global tenders are up to 200 crores, and we should therefore try to encourage local homegrown companies and support them. Not just any multinational companies that has come into India and their turnover is up to 200 crores or 100 crores or 150 crores, and therefore they can be part of the global tender. That should not be the case. The case should be that up to 200 crores, at least the homegrown companies should be encouraged, and therefore they should be able to take those projects. Friends, I know we have a time limit. I'm already, I think, 20-25 minutes into my talk. And I have been told, and this is in spite of the fact that I don't have my presentation in place, but I thank the organizers for this opportunity. And as Suman Food Consultants, we are one of the leading consulting companies in India for food processing sector, and we are happy to support both Make in India initiative as well as Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative for any company enterprise who's looking to grow, expand within the food processing sector. With that, I open the stage for any questions that the audience may have. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for such an insightful speech, sir, on the challenges you faced in this COVID-19. There are some questions from the audience. They wanted to know something about cashew nut processing industry. So your thoughts on this?
Sure. So cashew nut industry itself is India is a major player in cashew nut processing as such. But primarily, if you see the coconut and area is coconut belt and the coastal region are there from point of view of cashew nut processing. So if you're looking at cashew nut processing, you should be looking at coastal regions. You have Maharashtra, you have Goa, you have Karnataka, you have Andhra, and even Orissa, don't forget. Even up to Orissa and Assam, you have the entire coastal belt region, which is rich in cashews and can do cashew nut processing with regard to that. Typically, if you are looking at putting a cashew nut processing plant, keep in mind that your project cost at a minimum viable level would be about 6 to 8 odd crores. And this includes the land, building, plant, machinery, working capital margin, pre-operative expenses, as well as miscellaneous fixed assets. And and for those who are not in the coastal region and probably are looking at cashew processing, they can also look at further value addition. So they can look at situation where you can look at offering coated nuts, in different forms, in spice forms or in other forms. or they can look in offering paste in many forms. So there are multitude of options that can be there for cashew processing.
Okay, great. One more question, sir. You have spoken about Atmanirbhar Bharat. So how do you see Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign possible when there is a lot of Chinese investment in major food delivery companies in India? Like you take Zomato, Swiggy, Panda.
So that's a good question. Let me appreciate the question. So keep in mind, I think the government of India is of a position that if there is an investment, first of all, let me take a step back here and give you a further perspective. Atmanirbhar Bharat is looking for investments which is alternate to China, not as such as companies are smart. Please understand that they are not going to shut their shop in China for any reason and come over here. What companies will try to do is they will try to hedge their risks. They will try to put their eggs in different baskets, and that's where India comes up. Okay, so we had a situation in the world where we saw that we had companies that were sourcing and dependent on China for their requirements, and suddenly when China shut down, the entire supply chain world across the world got disrupted. So companies realized that putting all their eggs in one basket geopolitically may not be the right option. So what they therefore want to do is therefore look at another option in addition to China, where they can put their eggs and therefore geopolitically and supply chain wise be relevant. So you can have all these Southeast Asian countries who are having all these companies, Japanese companies, European companies, who are now looking at this region as an option, as an additional option to China in terms of investment. Now, let's talk in terms of this particular question that was there, and the strategy therefore is that I think government of India also realizes this, and idea is not to have a controlling stake in the company. Please understand that when a company makes an investment, they make an investment of a certain percentage. As soon as you make an investment of where you have more than 26% in terms of a company's stake, you need to be given compulsorily a board seat. And when you get a board seat, you therefore have a say in what the company does and how the company does and stuff like that. So while investments, if somebody wants to make, can be welcome, but I think government of India may restrict the extent to which the Chinese investments are made in a company so that there is no controlling stake that comes into the company. That's the difference. And that's
great. So
retain themselves as Indian.
Great, sir. Great reply. We'll take another question. Mr. Ronak Bed is asking, how is dehydration and freeze-dried industry, and how to market these products?
All right, another good question. So, dehydration industry is in many forms today. All right. If you see, we have many technologies associated with dehydration. We have air-dried, we have infrared, air-dried dehydration, infrared dehydration, microwave dehydration, osmotic dehydration, and even freeze-dried technologies associated. Now, the freeze-dried technology is the most expensive technology among all these technologies that I have mentioned. And but it has one big advantage. The advantage is that you are able to retain the nutritive value of the particular product and also the color aspect of it. Okay, so ideally, freeze-dried technologies are used for those products where a peel factor is very, very important. So, for example, if you have an upma and you have peas in it, okay, and when it is hydrated back again, the peas have to be looking as good as fresh and with the same crunch bite. That's when the freeze-drying technology comes into play. And this is primarily for those kind of technologies. There are cheaper technologies also with regard to that, such as osmotic dehydration and everything, where again you can keep the nutritive value and factor, but then the cost implication is very, very different. for that. In my suggestion is, if you are looking at a freeze-dried technology plant, you should look at least 1 metric ton per day capacity in terms of a freeze-dried plant. And the capital cost would be somewhere about 22 to 25 odd crores, including all the factors that I mentioned and building. Yeah.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for answering all the questions diligently. I have one gentleman who is raising his hand. Let me see if I can get him live. Mr. Bhaskar and GR.
Most welcome.
Mr. Bhaskaran, let me take one more. Mr. Sangram. No, I think there is some technical issue. So with this, sir, thank you so much for your time and now giving the detailed overview of what the challenges faced in this COVID-19. Every industry is facing so many challenges, and so as the food and beverage industry. So thank you so much for your detailed overview on that.
Thank you, Mahid. My quick thought on that is, for those who have not been able to come or questions.
Yeah. He's live now, sir. Yeah, Mr. Sangram, please ask your question.
Hi, how are you? We can't hear
your voice is not audible. Can you hear us?
Sangram, your voice is not audible.
Yeah, his voice is not audible. Sangram, can you hear us?
Very faint voice is coming, Sangram. Can you increase the volume? Probably volume may be an issue. Alright, till Sangram comes, let me share for those people whose questions have not been answered. Feel free to email us at sfc@sumanfoodconsultants.com. That is Singapore, Frankfurt, Canada, sfc@sumanfoodconsultants.com. We would be happy to answer those questions, or to connect with the organizers and pass us the question through them. We would be happy to answer any doubts or questions they would have for the food processing industries.
Right. Mr. Sangram, can you ask a question now? So he's asking about herbal extraction.
Yeah. Sangram, can you hear?
His voice is not audible, but he has written his question. He's asking about herbal extraction and health food.
All right. So both are opportunity areas with regard to both herbal extraction. So let's talk first in terms of herbal extraction. There are multitude of extractions that can primarily be taking place. Now you have all these forest crops that are there, or products from which you can extract. For example, from chili you can extract capsaicin, from turmeric you can extract curcumin. From that, capsaicin is used in arthritic medicine by pharma industries. Also, curcumin is used by the anti-cancer drugs. Basically, the fundamental fact is that while all the ailments and the issues, a lot of answer to them are out there in the nature, and all we need to do is we have a tradition historically also and culturally also of looking at nature and seeing how best to incorporate those solutions for ourselves. So herbal extraction is that method by which you are extracting the compound out of the particular food product and using it as your day-to-day need, and that also is therefore then linked with health, because these two answers rightly asked are linked, because at the end of the day the purpose is on the health, and the trend in the industry for food processing is the fact that people are looking for healthier option. Today's generation is much more health conscious than what it was than the previous generation associated with it. And let me tell you, today's generation is much more environmentally also conscious than the previous generation associated with it. So, so in healthier options also, you can look at offering healthier foods. So, if I can take example of let's say you are frying something, all right. In case of frying, you can under normal conditions, you can also look at vacuum fry technologies, whereby very less oil gets absorbed and you are able to retain the color and nutritive value of the food product also. So there are multitude of technologies today whereby you are able to offer healthier option. The problem sometimes happens is when an entrepreneur tries to do something really innovative, where the eating habit, where the food product is not part of their dietary habits. Okay, so there comes a challenge. But there are many products, while I encourage those entrepreneurs to go in the direction, but there are many products where you should be typically looking at, which are part of dietary habits and can be made in a healthier way, so that you can offer it to your consumers. I hope that answers.
Right, sir. Yes, right, sir. Thank you so much. There are other questions also, but due to time constraint, we won't be able to take that. I would try and get them answered in our next sessions. So with this, Mr. Sagar Kurade, thank you so much for your time. And we look forward to have other sessions in coming future also. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I hope it was helpful in some way. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So with this, we have concluded the second session of the day, the challenges in food and beverage industry due to COVID-19. Our next up is exhibitor session. So we would be coming in next 2 or 3 minutes. Thank you so much.